What is going on, you guys? Giants Nation, it's your boy Average Bob, and in today's video, we're going to talk about the 2023 NFL Draft and how the Giants fared out. Obviously, they're getting a lot of great publicity right now after Joe Schoen had an incredible draft. So let's dive into the guys that we picked and how they're going to fit into next year's team. First up, the Giants drafted cornerback Deonte Banks out of the University of Maryland. This is a great pick because he's going to be a day one starter. And this is what the Giants needed to get someone on their defense at the cornerback position because it is a little bit thin there. There are guys that have had some experience. And more recently last year, a lot of guys were kind of thrown into the mix and, rather exposed as the season went on and guys got hurt. Like Adoree Jackson went out on that stupid punt return. So hopefully we don't see him back there returning punts next year because we're going to need him to be playing cornerback. And Banks will fill in perfectly there in this sort of like for cornerbacks to be up and kind of naked a little bit with how much Wink Martindale does press coverage, but also bring a lot of blitzing. So he seems like a great athlete from everything that I've seen thus far, can run downfield and stick with guys. Really looking forward to see what he could do at the NFL. Obviously, he's playing some pretty big name guys in college. Maryland isn't necessarily a football powerhouse, but they do play top tier competition. So he was seeing a lot of guys that got picked this year, like Smith and Jigba from Ohio State. He was playing some pretty good competition, albeit not being on a great team himself. Up next in the second round, pick number 57, the Giants also made a great pick here with John Michael Schmitz, center from Minnesota. Big old boy. He's going to be day one starter, which is great because we needed to bring in someone to play center after Feliciano and Nick Gates both left. There was a lot to be desired with that interior offensive line between Glowinowski and Breederson, and now you have an answer at center, which Joe Schoen had recently said, I think like a month or two ago, they were looking at a couple different options there, possibly Shane Lemieux playing center. But as us Giants fans know, Shane Lemieux was thrown into the mix very early and possibly maybe negatively impacted his development. But he also really has never been healthy since his first rookie season years ago. So it's going to be interesting to see, how John Michael Schmitz acclimates to the Giants offensive line. He is 24 years old, so he is a little bit older for a drafted guy, which is great. His body's bigger. He's been, and once you get him into an NFL offseason program too, he's only got to get bigger, stronger, and faster. So it's just going to be ramping up just to see how fast the NFL defensive linemen are moving, especially when you see the Eagles D-line. It's one thing to read about them and watch them on Sunday, but it's probably a whole nother ball game when you're lining up against Fletcher Cox and then the new guy Carter, and they're going to be bringing absolute havoc. So it's going to be trial by fire from Schmitz from the start, but he is going to be starting from day one. So let's see how he can acclimate there. Up 3 was wide receiver Jaylin Hyatt out of the University of Tennessee. He had a great year last year as he won the Blitnikoff Award for the top wide receiver in college. He did fall a little bit where some people were kind of like, how, if he's that good, why is he falling to us? And honestly, I really don't care. The guy could play football at a pretty high level against some top tier competition. And he proved that obviously against Alabama last year in that shootout where he had 207 wide receiving yards and 5 touchdowns against Bama. So maybe Bama just had an off day and covering him, and Nick Saban probably lost a lot of sleep over that game. But again, this guy showed up on the big stage and did play really well when it did matter. So looking forward to see what he could do. And, there's that video with him kind of talking to the Cowboys wide receiver coach about running routes. And obviously he's running routes against no defense and not wearing any equipment. So take it with a grain of salt, but it is fun to see a guy talk a little bit of shit and be confident in his ability, especially talking to NFL coaches. The Giants did make a bunch of trades in this draft, so they didn't have a 4th round pick. And then in the 5th round, they took a running back from Oklahoma in Eric Gray, who had a pretty productive season for the Sooners last year. Obviously, he's probably not going to touch the field all too much. Fingers crossed if Saquon can stay healthy. But it is adding a little bit more depth and maybe potentially for the future to say, if Saquon does need a breather or a break or does go down with an injury, that maybe we have a young guy that could step up and make some plays for us there. Up next in the 6th round, the Giants did take cornerback Tre Hawkins out of Old Dominion. Pretty tall guy from what I've seen so far, about 6'3", 195 pounds. So that's another added depth guy at cornerback. So we could see how, he could fit into the mix. I mean, obviously there are a lot of guys around too, between looking at cornerbacks years past. We took Cordell Flott in the 3rd round of 2022. Also Dane Belton in round 4 of last year's draft. So there are some, guys around there that are going to be going into their 2nd year that hopefully did get a lot of experience last year. Again, they might not be the best players, but hey, experience gives them time. It gets them more comfortable. So there should be some competition, I think, in DB where hopefully the cream could rise to the top. Do we have the best secondary right now? The answer is probably not. But I think we did take in Joe Shane and Brian Dable and Mike Martindale did make some good steps in bringing it forward a little bit better than it was last year. In the 7th round, the Giants took an Oregon defensive tackle in Jordan Riley, who's 6'6", 325. And then in the 7th round, the Giants took another defensive back out of Houston in Javarius Owens. Again, just kind of, these 7th-round picks are like, do these guys, are they even going to make the team? Are they even going to be maybe practice squad guys? Hopefully, that's where Joe Shane's trying to find some diamond in the rough guys, as all these other teams are. But you never know, right? See how these guys pan out and look. But I think the Giants did a lot of great things in this draft. They addressed a couple key positions, especially at wide receiver, bringing someone in as a rookie and then having a couple other guys coming back off injury and a couple other free agent acquisitions between Paris Campbell and Jamison Crowder. So the wide receiver room is definitely increased exponentially compared to last season, where we started with like Richie James, David Sills, like Kenny Golladay never did anything. So this is a tremendous upgrade in the wide receiver room, and I'm really excited to see what they could do, especially Jaylin Hyatt. Being a 3rd-round pick, there probably isn't as much pressure for him as if he was a 1st or 2nd-round pick. So I'm really interested to see how he fits into the equation and is just another body for Danny Dimes to hopefully leverage more downfield and make more plays in the passing game, because last year was so heavily run-focused. So it's going to be interesting to see how Mike Kafka makes those adjustments there. Then also speaking about the run game, having John Michael Schmitz in the center position now, guy's obviously a big hoss and is used to pushing people around in that Minnesota Golden Gopher offense where they were running the ball the majority of the time. So that's great to see. He's probably got to work on his pass protection a little bit. But what I do like about John Michael Schmitz compared to the Jets center Joe Tippmann is Tippmann was 6'6", 317 or something along those lines, which is pretty massive for a center. You really don't see too many 6'6" centers just from a leverage perspective, where D tackles or low man always wins in the trenches, especially in that interior guard to center positions versus those bigger defensive tackles. I do like the Schmitz pick. He is older. He's got to get ramped up very quickly, and he's going to be our day one guy. Hopefully, we're talking about John Michael Schmitz for the next 10 years alongside, Evan Neal and Andrew Thomas. So just parts of a rebuild that are coming to be. And yeah, absolutely. I think Joe Shane and Brian Dable worked together and knocked this one out of the park. Obviously, Dable was loving a lot of it. He has, I don't know, it was his vape or his stogie that he's picking up and smoking after the picks. So, I love Coach. I can't wait to see what the Giants are going to progress to throughout this offseason, see if they bring in anyone else or how that the rest of the offseason develops. But man, I already can't wait for next season to start because I think we're building and we're growing, and it's going to be great. So anyway, thank you guys for watching, and have a great rest of your day and rest of your week.